Welcome to our first event for 2021. Hopefully you are all well wherever you are. My name is Engineer Mfano. I'm the current president of ZimNOG, or lead organizer ZimNOG. So I'll be moderating this session. And I'm assuming your mics are already on mute, but if you're not on mute, you can just mute your mic so that we avoid having a lot of feedback. If you have got any question or comment, I would suggest you raise your hand or you type on the comment section. There's a section for comments. So you can just type there, and then one of the organizers will respond to it. We will have a question and answer session later, but if you have got a burning question, you can either note it down somewhere or put it on the comment section there. So today we have two speakers. One of them is Engineer Cuthbert Chandaupenyu, ZimNOG co-organizer. He will give us a brief overview of ZimNOG plans for 2021. After that, we are going to have our main speaker, Toni Yannick Kalombo. Toni is the founder of DevBoks, a technology company that develops automation software for telecoms network operators. He's got 15 years experience in architecting and developing technology for geospatial telecoms, mining, defense, automotive, and financial services. So I'm going to put some forms, or rather links to forms, where if you want to give some feedback, you can give feedback there. That is overall feedback, probably about the event, or you've got something that you want to say. You can put it on those forms. I'll put it in the comment section. And then, as I've already said, we've got a Q&A session at the end. We should last for about 10 minutes. And then after that, I think our event will be over. We expect our event to take about an hour. By 7, we should be done. Right. Sorry, I have to admit some people. Okay. So as I've said, I'll put some links to some forms in the comment section, and then you can give your input there. Right. I'll need to check if Engineer Cuthbert is ready to take over. Let me check. I think he was having some connectivity challenges, but he should be joining and then taking us through his presentation.
Hi, Figgy. Hello?
Yes, you are in now, Engineer.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think my PC is acting up, so I'm going to using my phone. Do you have the slide that I'm supposed to share? Can you put it on the screen?
Okay. Let me check if Toni is around. Maybe Toni can start whilst you're working on your PC. Toni, are you in yet?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So I think you can go ahead. I've already introduced you. You can go ahead and start your presentation. Then Cuthbert to come in after the question and answer session.
Okay, cool, I will do that. So I'm going to share my screen now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, please enable me too.
Okay. It's Tony's MacBook, right?
Yes, that's the one.
Okay, you can go ahead now.
Thank you. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it this side.
Great. I'm going to put it in presentation mode. Please tell me if you still see it. Can you see that?
Yes, still seeing it.
Okay, you can see the presentation.
Yes, yeah.
All righty. Cool. Thank you. Okay, you've made me host, and it seems like there are some people in the waiting room that I'm being asked to admit. Do you want to, shall I let?
I'll handle that, don't worry about that.
Okay, great. All right, well, thanks everyone for joining this talk, and thank you to the ZimNOG team for allowing me to present this. This is really a very deeply in-depth technical talk that I'm going to present, but the aim is to really just see where the world is going, or at least what's happening in the world of virtualization and cloud computing. And this is really just from a practical demo perspective. And I hope that you'll at least gain some insights and learn something or teach me something as we go along. So this presentation is about network automation and programmability of cloud-hosted virtual appliances. It's a mouthful, but let me get into it. So as you may know, I've been introduced. My name is Toni Yannick Kalombo. I founded a company called DevBoks, which is a software-defined networking company. So I'm going to present to you some of the things that I've been working on and allow your mind to see the possibility of what else can be done with virtual appliances. All right. So first of all, we have been ushered into an age of automation, and there's been quite a lot of talk about the fourth industrial revolution. For me, really, it's just an age of automation where you think that you can put an IP address. And I have here an illustration of a horse carriage. And imagine 150 years ago or 100 years ago when the automobile was first introduced, and then a few years later when Henry Ford brought the Ford to the why do we need a vehicle? I have a workhorse and my horse is reliable, right? Fast forward to now, everybody gets in a car and drives, and it's business of getting vehicles to be so autonomous to the point that today vehicles do not require human beings to actually operate. the beginning of automation is always very difficult, and it's very difficult for people to comprehend and to embrace. But as we embrace more automation and new innovations come up, then it becomes obvious why we need a way. Well, we probably took away jobs from the people who made things like hooves for horses back in the day. But where we are right now, we are better off, because for the jobs that were taken away, thousands more jobs were introduced in the manufacturing plants, and those were more productive jobs and more skilled jobs. So I do believe that automation and the age of automation is not here to replace jobs, but to actually force us into the uncomfortable place where we have to learn new. All right. So in a nutshell, network automation is really the use of software to automatically configure, provision, and manage and test network devices. We have a running joke around amongst my where we say to err is human, but to propagate errors massively at scale is automation. So that's kind of one of the risks of automation is if you make an error and then you go apply that error to automation. And if you have 1,000 IoT devices on your network, then you've propagated errors to 1,000 devices. So there has to be a lot of guardrails and a lot of best practices that are taken into account to make sure that errors are not a factor when it comes to running automation at scale. And of course, automation, you know, some buzzwords, software-defined networking, network function virtualization, provisioning. All of these things are things that I'm going to demonstrate in this presentation at a very small scale, but to give an idea of what it's about. And if you understand the basic first principles, then you can take that at a mass scale and take that to a hyperscale data center level, right? So let's talk a little bit about virtual appliances. Virtual appliances are pretty much pre-configured software that are installed on virtual machines and packaged into an image and made ready to run on a hypervisor. To cut the mouthful short, imagine if you have, I don't know if you remember back in the days when you needed to install your Windows operating system on a CD on your computer, you would first burn it into an ISO, and then you burn ISO onto a CD, then you can take that CD, plug into your CD-ROM, and bam, you have Windows on your machine. And this is pretty much what's happening with virtual appliances. Whether it's Windows or Linux, or it could be a Cisco router, you could actually burn it into an image, and then you can take that image and deploy it to any machine that you point that image at. And that really is the idea behind virtual appliances and virtual machines. Some common network virtual appliances being one of them. And of course, Cisco has the wonderful CSR 1000V, which is very powerful for connecting your cloud, your resources that you have in the cloud with other resources in other clouds or resources in your on-premise infrastructure. So with that said, the next one, if I get cut off, please just give me 30 seconds because we had load shedding here and the power's back. So my Wi-Fi router is gonna kick in and there might be a bit of a cut off. So just please ping me Fanufikile,
Okay.
if you
Okay, I think you might have been cut off there. So we just give him some time to come back. Cuthbert, are you still in?
Yes, I mean.
Okay, maybe we can just take this opportunity to go through your presentation whilst Tony is working on his network.
Okay, sure.
So I will share my screen.
Okay. Okay, thanks for that.
Okay.
So, thanks to everyone for joining us today. So I'm going to give you an introduction of what we are, what we do, what we've been doing in the past year, and what we'll be doing during this year 2021. So in a nutshell, ZimNOG was founded in 2015. ZimNOG stands for Zimbabwe Network Operators Group. But don't be fooled by the. Wait, let me see if I can connect this.
Yeah, as I was saying, don't be fooled by the name ZimNOG. You can hear me, right, Van Vigel?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. So it's just a group that's there to educate IT people, even those that are not in IT, to keep us up to speed with what's happening out there. Because with the advent of the COVID-19, there's been a lot that has been happening in the IT world. So we're a non-profit group that is aimed at doing tutorials, discussions online, ICT-related labs, and all those things. Before the emergence of the COVID-19, we used to have like practical personal workshops whereby we meet and we train people. But because of what's happening nowadays, we can't really meet in person. So we are doing this online thanks to technologies like Zoom. So I'm going to introduce you to some of the things, our social network, our social handles, social media handles that you can use to get in touch with us. Can you put in the next slide, please?
Okay.
So one of the things that we've been working on is our ZimNOG website. As you can see, there is a link there. If you can go and visit it, you'll be able to see our past events and our upcoming events as well. We put a schedule there so that you can prepare in time in the future to join us. It's last year was quite a good year for us because we hosted some events that were really important. So you just want to go to the past events and see what we've been up to. Next slide. So this year, basically, we have quite some events that are stocked up. The slide, there's some details that are left out, but I'll keep you up to speed with us what will be coming up. So we started in March. We were supposed to start in January, but there were some technicalities that were happening. But we decided to start in March and keep the ball running. So today, which is today's event, we have the network automation, and then there are some events that will be happening from April to June, then July, September, October, November, and then up to December. Next slide. Yeah, so for April to June, we have a networking event whereby people are going to come up, we'll find a platform that we use so that we'll be able to share, talk to each other, like people doing normally in real life experiences. whereby you share, exchange ideas, exchange phone numbers and business cards, and so that we can actually develop both Zimbabwe and Africa at large. So this is one of the events that will be coming in April. And then we have also have a 2021, like a career paths event, whereby there are many fields of expertise we can now venture into nowadays. So we're going to help each other, like maybe especially the students or those that are yet to come into IT, will be sort of like having conversations, and we'll be mapping people to what's the best career path they can take in 2021, and what are the future jobs that will be available in the next years. And then we have a cloud computing presentation, and someone will come and present to us what exactly is cloud computing. We hear about cloud computing, but what is it exactly? So we'll present that as well. Can you move on to the next one? And then from July to September, we have an online IT lab, whereby some who went to be trained, wanted to train people with the SSL certification of websites. So it's one of the labs that we're going to do. It'll be a hands-on thing. So you guys will be online with your computers, and there will be a person or a trainer who will be telling us what to do, the steps to take, and the measures that we're supposed to take in order to secure our websites. I don't know if it's possible. If you can let me share my screen, I have the full slide, because I can see this one is not up to date.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Okay. Can you enable me? Okay, thanks. So I think I was here. There's some slides that I wanted us to see as well. There's this one, and then we have this. I was here, right? The July to September online lab, whereby we'll be training people. And then there's also an artificial intelligence lab that will be coming up as well later on along the year, whereby we're going to talk about visual learning, visual machines, as well as machine learning and artificial intelligence. That will be from October up to December. So feel free to join us at any time, and we'll be able to share with you the experience of the people that will be joining in. Because last year, if you go to our website, we host big people like we are doing here today with Mr. Toni Kalombo. We also have big giants in the industry that will be able to share their ideas. So please feel free, go visit our website that is here, see our past events, our details, sign up to our meetup page so that you can be up to date with the events that will be coming up. And there's also an invitation for blogging. There's a section for blogging. So if you have an article that you think can help people out there, just contact us, and then we'll be able to put out your article online, and then people will be able to see it. And also, if you have a burning topic, you want to present something, you can contact us. We can organize a meeting for you and give you the platform to host or to show your skills and teach and train people. And remember, this is a non-profit organization. It's voluntary based, so we are there to help the community. We are there to help those that are in IT, even those that are not in IT. We're also there to help. Thank you. I think Mr. Toni can continue for now. Thanks, Mr. Nuri.
Okay, you can stop sharing, and then Toni can come back.
All right, thank you. And I apologize for that. We have load shedding, which is pretty much, we've been having blackouts here in Joburg again. And it's fun and games when the power goes out. Unfortunately, all the devices disconnect and reconnect.
Yeah, it happens, eh?
Yeah, great. All right, I'm gonna start sharing again and pick up from where I left. Tell me, Mfanufukile, did you guys hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm just gonna share my screen again. I'm gonna put it in presentation mode. Can you see it?
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, okay, so I was pretty much running you through the different network virtual appliances, and I was talking about the Arista, which in essence is a containerized. So Arista has the virtual machine version, which they call VEOS, and EOS is the Arista operating system. And they have the containerized version, which is CEOS. We pretty much work with all mostly with Cisco, with Arista and MikroTik, and we work with virtualized appliances. And kind of one of my challenges is to virtualize as much as possible. So if you give me the option between bare metal and a virtual appliance, I will opt for a virtual appliance just for the versatility that it has, but of course it also would be fit for purpose. So there are a lot of instances and incidents where your bare metal or your physical appliance will always top the virtual appliance, but we're seeing a whole lot more use of virtual appliances. And I foresee that in the future, there's going to be a whole lot more of the network functions which are going to be virtualized. So the term VNF, virtual network functions, is pretty much things such as BGP or LACP, network functions that would exist in a router. So if you have a Cisco router or an Arista router or switch that will have functions that are native to that bare metal. And more we are building software defined functions that perform only those functions discretely. So therefore the need to purchase an entire switch or an entire router becomes more and more obsolete because people are opting more for the custom functionality rather than the full functionality. So it's, and again, this is on a case-by-case basis. But as we move more to the cloud, what you'll have is you'd have your top of rack switches, which stands for TOR, T-O-R, and then anything else underneath it can just be x86 servers that will host a container or a virtual machine that will perform network functions that are necessary. So this has become the trend more and more as we move into the data center. So another common network virtual appliance is Juniper. They also have the VMX, which is their virtual router. And MikroTik as well as the cloud hosted router. So all of these have the unique functionality, and depending on the use case, you can actually really find some decent use cases if you are moving into the cloud and you need to perform some customized routing that your cloud provider doesn't offer, or that you feel that you can do better than your cloud provider. So cloud platforms, we know well the more dominant cloud platforms that have become and are becoming more and more dominant. Amazon AWS recently launched their data center in Cape Town. We have Microsoft Azure as well, which is launching a data center if they have not done it already. We have Google Cloud, and these three are really amongst the biggest players in public cloud. But we also have OpenStack, which is the open source version of cloud computing. And I had the privilege of in previous projects to actually build an open source, an OpenStack cloud, and it's very interesting and very exciting, the space that we are going into. And maybe some questions that we may ask ourselves is, why are Google, Amazon, and Microsoft dominating the game while we have free tools to allow us to build our own cloud platforms? And you will find that there's a lot of conversations about having pure African cloud companies. But these are economies of scale, and the big guys, the big tech companies in Silicon Valley always trump the competition because they have the budgets. Interestingly enough, in France, a European-based cloud company called OVH Cloud, one of their data centers literally burned to ashes this week. So there's quite a lot of risks and a lot of challenges around building cloud platforms, having different availability zones, having redundancy measures, having safety measures, and all of that. Having scale are things to take into account if we are really going to talk about having cloud platforms in Africa. But when I look at the African continent, you know, a lot of the game is happening in South Africa, but it's also happening at a small scale relative to what's happening in Silicon Valley. But all the other African regions are underserved when it comes to technology. So we as Africans have to do a lot to build up our infrastructure in order to actually stay ahead and to innovate and to actually benefit from the so-called fourth industrial revolution. For me, I just call it the age of automation. So some use cases are virtual network appliances, so connectivity between your VPCs, what we call virtual private clouds. We can create a WAN gateway, integrated services, and traffic control. So part of automation is a practice called DevBoks. And if you have been following Cisco, last year Cisco released a program called DevNet, which is pretty much the practice of moving network engineers into becoming software engineers, or rather upskilling network engineers with native software engineering skills. And this is quite important, and this has become the direction. So going back to the guys who used to make, who pretty much used to maintain horses, have to learn the new skills of how to build automobiles. And this is pretty much it. Funny enough, network engineering is becoming an obsolete practice. As more and more cloud networking is adopted, network engineering is going to become more of a DevOps function, which we call net DevOps. And in DevOps, we have what we call a CI/CD pipeline, which is continuous integration, continuous delivery, and which pretty much allows you to first treat your network like you would treat releasing of software. You would take your network and model it as a software a platform, test it, and then deploy it. And you would also deploy it in the blue, red, green is called canary deployments, and you have different kind of deployment strategies. So you would deploy it in a staggered manner and deploy a portion of your network, make sure that that's functional, and then deploy other portions until you've made your changes. So in other words, you will start doing version updates and version upgrades on your network. In that way, you can look out for errors, and if there's an error, you can also have the ability to roll back. And in that way, you have a mechanism to continuously improve the network without ever bringing the network down or without introducing errors into your network. And the typical toolbox from a high-level hierarchical diagram from the bottom up, you usually would have a development environment where you would develop your software artifacts or your network artifacts, and then you would test it, and then you would ship it into production. And these environments are more than often going to have the underlay part, which would be your virtualization platform, which would have network devices, and those network devices can be modeled as software rather as CLI or SNMP, which a lot of people are moving away from, or as netconf and restconf. And netconf and restconf have been one of the early attempts to put APIs on network devices, and they have brought up a lot of other interesting functionality or applications, such as putting REST APIs or gRPC, which has also brought up GNMI, which is a gRPC-based protocol that pretty much allows you to do much more intelligent management of your network. And with that, you can do some telemetry and monitoring. All that it means is you can actually monitor your network by using fancy graphs, and you can use ELK, which is elastic, I forget what the L stands for, but it's Kibana and another application. I remember what the L stands for, but it's pretty much this new way of doing elastic monitoring of pretty much your computing resources. And then you can also test, configure, and once you've done that, then you can ship it to a build server, which will actually build, and then you can distribute it using a Git repository. In that way, you have some proper source control and some version controlling of what's actually happening on your network. So graphically, this is what the environment looks like. The bold engineer writes some code, he pushes it through version control, and that version control spins up some Ansible playbook of sorts, or Cisco's NSO or anything else, and then that will spin up a development environment, and that development environment would execute the code, do some source control on it again, and then and integrate with your simulated network, test your configs, and if the configs pass, it's going to send you a notification to say you're good to go. So these are typical tools, and part of my demonstration, you will see that I use some of these tools as well. So Ansible. I'm very excited about Ansible. It is not the last tool, and it's not the ultimate tool. There's a few tools out there, such as Chef and Puppet. I'm a fan of Ansible because of how well it integrates with network elements and of the network modules that are well built. It's usually a YAML or JSON-based sort of platform that allows us to configure specific recipes that we can actually, or specific configuration that you can actually deploy to remote nodes. And by remote nodes, that could be a virtual machine, it could be a physical machine, it could be a virtual router, it could be a physical router. All right, so, and how does Ansible work? Essentially, you have what we call an inventory file, and in your inventory file, you'll have the IP addresses or the DNS names of the target devices that you want to push configuration against. And you can actually also organize them by groups. So you can say, I'm going to deploy a config to all my servers in Johannesburg. And then you have the Johannesburg group, and then you point to the Johannesburg group, and you're going to have the exact same config deployed to your Johannesburg group. Or you can just pick a single device or a couple of devices from your inventory group, and you can target them. And then what you deploy on those devices, you will actually configure inside what we call a playbook. And from that playbook, you can pretty much do pretty much anything that you can do manually. And the awesome thing about Ansible that is SSH based, so it connects with your devices using the SSH port. which is port 22, as opposed to having an agent that you have to install on each and every device before you can actually get it to work. So it's very quick and easy to get up and running as long as you have SSH access to that device. So demo time. If you go to this link, which I will also ask Fanu Figile to share with the forum, I have a 13-step instruction that can get you to do what I'm about to do now. So what we have here is a Vagrant file. And so I'll explain this. So if we go back to this image, what I have is I have an Ansible local machine, and I have some nodes that are sitting in the cloud, in the AWS cloud, node 1, node 2, node 3. But I'm just going to focus on node 1 for now. I'm going to deploy. I'm going to build. First of all, I'm going to automatically build this Ansible machine from scratch, purely in configuration. And then I'm going to put all the necessary configuration onto that Ansible machine. Once I have the configuration on that Ansible machine, I'm going to point to a specific playbook that's going to go to the Amazon cloud, and it's going to automatically spin up an EC2 virtual machine. And an EC2 virtual machine, pretty much EC2 stands for Elastic Cloud Compute, and that's pretty much Amazon's way of calling virtual machines. So it's going to spin up automatically a virtual machine, and on that virtual machine, it's going to install the image for a Cisco CSR 1000V. Remember, I explained what a CSR 1000V image is from Cisco. It's going to install that, and that is going to allow me to automatically provision a virtual router in the cloud just from a single command. So coming back to this, this is the tool that I'm going to use for this is Vagrant. So Vagrant is a platform that you can install on your computer, and from Vagrant you can actually spin up a virtual machine. Vagrant is in a way an orchestration platform for which can use VirtualBox to spin up virtual machines. So you can have a whole bunch of different providers. As you can see here on line 11, the provider that I use here is VirtualBox. And what this does is it spins up a virtual machine in Ubuntu. So it's going to be an Ubuntu virtual machine. So it's going to spin up Ubuntu, and it's going to use VirtualBox to do it. And then it's going to give that virtual machine a name. It's going to assign some memory to it. I'm assigning 1 GB of memory to it, not a lot of memory, 2 vCPU cores. And I'm going to give it a private network. So it's only going to be accessible to my laptop, and my laptop will be the host. This Ubuntu machine will be the guest. So I'm going to spin up an Ubuntu operating system on top of the operating system that I'm running on my laptop. And then when I spin up that Ubuntu virtual machine, it's pretty much going to be a virgin, if I can call it that. It's not going to have anything installed on it. So what I do now is I have an Ansible playbook that actually installs Ansible. So I'm using Ansible to install Ansible on my virtual machine. And then I'm also going to install stuff like authorization keys and all other dependencies so that I have a development environment that's ready to go. If you've ever worked with installing a computer, you know that you don't just get a computer that has all the software on it. You have to go and install everything. So imagine if you've ever lost your laptop, you find yourself having to install all the software from scratch. Now imagine if there was one button that you could click and then it installs all the software that you ever need. This is kind of what we've done here, right? So the command is vagrant up. So if you follow the instructions, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through the instructions, but after having followed the instructions and you have cloned that Git repository onto your machine, all that you need to do now is enter vagrant up, and vagrant is going to run, and it's actually going to install an Ubuntu Bionic version. And once it's installed the Ubuntu Bionic version, it's actually going to carry on oops. Yeah, and it's gonna carry on and install all the dependencies, but I don't have that screen here. Once it's installed the dependencies, I'm going to stop this share and I'm going to just do a live demo for you guys. And I hope the demo gods are gonna be on my side. So I'm gonna stop the share. I've lost use of my mouse. Okay, here we go. So I'm gonna stop the share and I'm going to share my terminal screen. And I'm just gonna run the demo in real time. Cool. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Wonderful, cool. So I've now installed, this is me having run a previous version just to make sure everything works, but let me give you a clean screen. I've now installed Ubuntu and I have everything going. And I go into this directory, which is called Ansible. And from here, I'm just gonna run one command, which is make deploy AWS CSR 1000V. And what this is going to do, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this side by side. But as you can see, this is running another Ansible playbook. As you can see, it starts the EC2 instance with the CSR 1000V image. Gathering facts is just a way of getting all the information about that image, and then it configures it, and boom, once I get this, you can tell me that it's already configured it, and it's even given it an IP address, and a DNS name, if you are familiar with Amazon. And now it waits for SSH to come up. Let me share rather my desktop with you like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this here. So I'm gonna just refresh this quickly. And you will see that this here, that's busy initializing. I've tagged it, it's called CSRV81. So, whoopsie, let me put all of this. So if you look at this, you will see that, I wonder if the tag will show here. But it's called CSRV81. And if you look at the public IP, it's 18.130. So if you look here, public IP here, 18.130. So that's the one, and it's busy spinning up. And while that's spinning up, SSH, it takes a while for SSH to come up. If you've ever booted up a Cisco router, you know you've got to wait at least 5 minutes to come up. While that's happening, let me explain to you what's happening in the background. I'm gonna put my text editor here, and I'm just gonna run you through this playbook. Can you see the playbook with the red and yellow?
Yeah, we can see it.
Thank you. So as you can see, I'm spinning up this EC2 instance. The region EU West 2 is London. So this is in the AWS region in London. Unfortunately, this API is not available for the Cape Town region yet, because the Cape Town region only came up, I think, like in December or November. So the APIs have not caught up yet. So it's not available for the Cape Town region, but I'm spinning it up in Cape Town. These are my secret keys, which I keep as environment variables. And if you go to my GitHub repository, it explains how you set that up. And then I have a private key here, which I also show why it's important and why you set it up. And then I'm using Python 3. I already have created a virtual private cloud, and the subnet ID is that. So it will look for this specific virtual cloud in Amazon on my account, and it's going to install my virtual machine inside this virtual cloud. Therefore, it's going to assign it IP addresses that are relevant to this virtual cloud. And this is a closed virtual cloud, which is not accessible outside unless, as you have seen, I've enabled it to allow a public IP address. But what I do, I generate a random number there so that I can just identify the machine that I'm running. And as you can see here, that random number is this one. 81 is the machine that I'm actually running. So generate a random number, And then after that, I select the instance type. So if you know Amazon's product, or if you've used cloud computing, you know that you have different flavors of instances. And the C5 large is usually I believe it has 4 gigs of RAM, a specific amount of storage, and a specific amount of throughput. So this is kind of the minimum one that you need to actually spin up this image. And then the image itself, this is the AMI ID. AMI stands for Amazon something image, Amazon machine image. But in a nutshell, it's that analogy that I gave you about the ISO. It's kind of an ISO file for clouds, right? And I've made notes. So this is, and the BYOL is bring your own license. So this is a free image, but I will be charged for the C5 instance. So if you're gonna test this and you're gonna create an Amazon account, spin it up quickly, destroy it quickly, because if you leave it running, you're gonna get a nice bill at the end of the month. Amazon has the T2 micro instances, which are free, but it's too small to host a virtual router. So, and then, so you use different AMIs for London and for Cape Town, and that's the product code. And this is the link that I use to go register, because you first have to go and register for it on Cisco's, on Amazon's marketplace using your Amazon account. You have to register it with Cisco. So this is it. I was waiting for SSH to come up. I put in within a specific launch wizard group, and these launch wizard groups are just almost like the access rules about which ports the device should have exposure to the public. And so my access rules are really only just SSH port 22. All right, once I do that, it spins it up, it registers it. It makes sure that the instances are tagged. So this is it where I put that random number. I tagged it as CSRV81. I tagged it, and then I waited for SSH to come up. That means that if SSH is not available, then the router is still booting up. Once the router is fully booted up, because I'm using SSH keys, if you've used SSH, you will know that your computer will ask you whether this is a trusted device. And so this section here just allows me to make sure that I add it to my trusted devices so that I don't get that prompt. Because with automation, if you get a prompt, then your automation is going to freeze because you don't have, it's not a user interface. So your automated system cannot click a yes or a no. So, so we just turn off all the prompts, and this is a way of turning off that specific prompt. Another thing that I've done is I've kept this host name, I've attached it, I've put it inside a file where I can access it later. So later is here. I put it inside this file called CSR1000V hosts, and then I call another playbook. And this playbook specifically goes and it provisions the actual router. So this SSHs into the router, it runs some basic commands like show version and show interfaces. And then after that, it actually creates a user for me. So it creates a user called Toni. So now I can go and SSH on this router as Toni. So while I was explaining all of that, my router finished, can you still see the screen? Yeah. My router finished booting up. Everything is okay, no errors. I see a lot of greens that say okay, there's nothing red. So if I take this DNS name that Amazon has created for me, it's dynamic, so I don't create it, it creates it on the fly, and I SSH Toni at the DNS name, and it should let me in. Let me see. Oh, okay. I actually enabled password authentication, and that's why it's not letting me in. I'm gonna have to just turn it off. So I did that just earlier on. If you look here, no password, I was supposed to have said true. I said false, because with SSH, it doesn't allow you to do it with password. So I'm gonna have to run this again for it to actually allow me in. But let's use the other one that I had already created, which is this one. This is its IP address, its public IP address. So if I SSH into that one, it should allow me in, unless I did this before I spun that up. Let's see. Yes. So that's that prompt that automation doesn't like. Oh no, I did this before as well. It's not a train smash. I wonder if the default Cisco password will work. No, it won't work. But okay, no train smash. I'll run this in the meantime, and then if we still have time, you can ask me questions. So anyway, this is the end of my talk. And the whole purpose of this talk really was for me to like dive into a practical example of how we handle virtual network functions in the cloud, and to just spark your interest about the cool and awesome things that we can do with it. And this is me doing it on Amazon. You can pretty much do this on any cloud that has an API. And I've shown you Ansible, I've shown you Cisco CSR 1000V, and I've shown you some Vagrant. And these are pretty much the tool sets that future network engineers will be using. All right, that's the end. And if anybody has questions, please feel free. So I'm handing back over to you, Mfano Figile. While you're talking, I'm gonna let this run again, and then I'll show you that we can log onto that device and push configs to it as well.
Okay, thanks a lot for the presentation. Yeah, it was quite deep and interesting. I'm hoping people have got questions. You can either raise your hand if you have got a question, or you can put it on the comment section, and then Toni can attend to it. Cuthbert, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Toni, for such a wonderful presentation. I just wanted to ask, one of the main reasons why this SDN thing came into play was for there to be routers with no control plane, right? So that there will only be the data plane. So that means the ISPs and other companies, they can use the routers and the switches with vendor-free routers and switches. So I wanted to ask, have we yet reached that point whereby Juniper, the SDN infrastructure from Juniper can actually work with that from Cisco? For example, I have an SDN infrastructure from Cisco, and can I operate it on Huawei routers? Have we yet reached that stage, or we are still on our way? Thanks.
Great. Cool. May I answer that?
Okay, you can go ahead and answer.
Sure. Well, so first of all, SDN is not to remove the control plane, but it's to separate, to have a separation between the control plane and the data plane. And the problem, of course, is that we have a lot of different standards and different RFCs that come into play. And of course, you have different vendors. And there's the term of vendor interoperability. So I do not believe that we are yet at the stage where you can have a universal router. But I do believe that we are at a stage where if you use a Cisco, an Arista, or a Juniper, even a MikroTik or a Huawei, if they adopt some of the standards, then you can work according to that standard to have some sort of universal access. And ironically, SSH is probably the best tool that there was, because you can create protocols on top of which you can operate over SSH. With that said, there's a gRPC, which has also come up. And gRPC has been very awesome. So if you use GNMI, for instance, a lot of the vendors are actually writing wrappers, GNMI wrappers, to allow you to use GNMI universally for their routers. So just go look at projects such as GNMI, and you'll see that SDN is taking a totally different direction. And I believe that virtual routers are really the first step. My goal, my objective, one of the reasons why DevBoks exists as a company today is to really just have APIs that you can consume to perform functions that you traditionally needed to do via CLI. So what's really going to be happening is we're going to have more Docker containerized applications. So Cisco is going to decide to do BGP in Docker, for instance. Someone might shoot me for saying that, but I'm using an example. And they're going to host it on the cloud. And you can put a Docker container on the edge, for instance, and that Docker container can be attached to a very powerful virtual machine, and it's going to do your routing for you, and it's going to handle your route tables and so forth. And in that way, you actually will not necessarily need to have a physical bare metal, but you may have some piece of software from the vendor that would allow you to perform that unique function. So for me, SDN is really not just separating the management and the control and the data plane, but it's also taking a bloated router and removing the unnecessary stuff and only using what you need. So if you know people who work in the networking side at Amazon, for instance, you know that Amazon has their own routers and switches. They don't use any vendor routers and switches. And that came about because their network got so big that they couldn't they couldn't operate it with traditional routers that vendors sell them, because they were only really they would only use 60% of the functionality, and the other 40% will just be dead weight. But then something from that 40% will break, and then it will break the whole switch and the whole router. And then they have to repair the whole router because unrelated functionality is broken. And for me, that's the direction that we're going towards, where you're really going to use network functions for bespoke applications or for purpose-built applications. And the stuff you don't need, you shouldn't be using and you shouldn't be paying for it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? You can raise your hand. Maybe while people are thinking, since you're in the business, Toni, how has been the uptake? Are service providers and Fintechs already migrating to SDN, especially maybe in Southern Africa?
I think it's been, people have been talking about it, you know, but I would say that some of the big network carriers, you know, I think the smaller ISPs are still like price conscious because it's always an investment, some capital you need to put in. But I think that there's some very good long-term benefits. So small ISPs are still, you know, chugging along in the same way that they have been, but the big network operators already see the benefits. And we have some of the big network operators who are doing amazing things. And virtual networking is growing by day. So if you, in the data center, more and more people are moving into the data center, and more people are spinning up virtual infrastructure. And it's really just a matter of time. Unfortunately, we've left, well, maybe fortunately, because Amazon and Google and Microsoft saw the future. But I do see, like, maybe 100% of companies moving all their infrastructure to cloud platforms such as Amazon and Google. And more people are struggling with failing infrastructure and the cost of replacing that failing infrastructure. So as soon as you have to go replace your routers and switches, you start thinking about whether or not it might be cheaper to move to the cloud. So this is happening, and the people who are not doing it are going to be forced to do it because they would not have a choice anymore. And also the vendors are being forced to do it because that's what the market wants, and also because, that's just the way that the market is going.
Okay, thank you. I see Fidelis Mkandla. You've raised your hand. You can go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Just a comment on the software-defined networking. I think there was a previous question that was asking about how easy it is to configure devices. So I think one of the things that has happened, if you follow the Cisco DevNet program, you will realize that there are these protocols like the netconf, which is really replacing SNMP. And the aim is to have this abstraction, which sort of takes away the dependency on a CLI for a specific vendor. So that's one thing to sort of pick on this. Is sort of abstracting, separating what you want to do and sort of delinking from a specific programmable set. And the other thing are the YANG models, which are also providing sort of a platform to describe devices and decoupling them from any vendor type of specifications. So I think when you talk about programmable networks, one of the things then that is happening right now is that decoupling, so that when you are programming your devices, regardless of whether you are programming a Juniper device or a Cisco device, if it's adhering to the netconf protocol and it can receive YANG modeling, then you can program it and you're sort of vendor agnostic. That's what I wanted to contribute.
Yes, I am totally agreed, and I'm not even going to add to that. This presentation, I've actually shortened it, but the other half of the presentation actually goes into using GNMI for YANG modeled devices. So for instance, the Arista COS, Cisco still, there were some challenges that we've experienced with Cisco, but with Arista, for instance, they've done a lot of work into actually YANG. Not that Cisco doesn't enable for YANG, but Arista has a very good gRPC library, and I can share all of that information that actually allows you to use like GNMI for network management. So you move away from SNMP and you use GNMI to actually pull telemetry to pull telemetry from specific interfaces. You can even pick the interfaces, or you can select all the interfaces. So so definitely, just to add to that, it's the deep coupling and the abstraction. That's, for me, I believe that's like the short-term goal, to create an abstraction layer for what's already there. The one who will win is the one who's totally going to reinvent routing and switching in a software native manner and not in an abstracted manner. I believe that's where the game is at. But I believe that's going to be a community effort that would involve such bodies such as the IETF. And I think YANG and gRPC and GNMI are a step in that direction, where you can just have, you don't really care what the interfaces or the devices look like anymore, as long as you can you can describe them in a Yang-like manner, and you can interact with them. Then you can push configs to them, you can subscribe, or you can set and get and update or delete without concerning yourself as to what the end device is. But I do believe that we're going to move to a more software-centric way, where you're just dealing with models regardless of what's in the backend. It's a little bit like we did with databases, where if you use like NoSQL or object relational management modeling, you wouldn't really know what database you're interacting with. You can just describe the database and interact with it without worrying about whether it's MySQL or Postgres and what the syntax you need for that database is. So we're moving away from syntax and more towards modeling. And I think part of this presentation is for me to just show you some of the different types of modeling that you can do with Ansible, for instance, or with Vagrant, or with Yang, you know, and there's a whole lot more to it.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we have to wind up. Probably in the next 5 minutes, we should be done. I'm seeing Fidelis, your hand is still up.
Yeah, no, but just as a side note, I think I would agree with Tony. I was just thinking about that with the security threats that are currently in the IT space, it's like the whole IP stack needs a reinvention. So just as a side note, really, to what Tony has said, these security breaches that we're seeing every day, I think the only way they can be sort of solved is if the whole system is re-architected, and in that model-based way, like what Tony was saying, would be like a right direction.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
Cindy Somachanga, you have got a question?
Yes, I have a question. I was here in the beginning of the presentation. I heard you talking about new monitoring technology. Like as a person who's actually working with network programmability and automation, I heard you talking about model-driven telemetry. What, like as a person who's worked with big vendors, is it are people moving away from SNMP to model-driven telemetry, or are people still running on using SNMP?
Well, I think, you know, it's SNMP is like one of those children that we inherited, and it's that child that you inherited but is always misbehaving. So I don't think that people speak as fondly of SNMP as they speak of other protocols. But you'll find that no one speaks well of SNMP. I've worked with SNMP and it's painful. And as soon as we talk about SNMP, everyone runs away. In my experience, yes, everyone that I speak to has moved away or is moving away from SNMP. But because it's part of the traditional network, it's just so expensive to remove it. So the way that people have been dealing with it is to just limit the usage of it. And explore new ways of doing things. And one of those ways, for instance, is you have network monitoring systems. So some companies just purchase network monitoring systems. One such network monitoring system would be, is it Cacti, which is open source. But you have some more enterprise-grade network monitoring systems. In South Africa, there's Iris, for instance, which is one of the companies that does network monitoring. And what these guys do, once again, they have an abstraction between SNMP and an API interface. So they provide the API interface, and then they do the dirty work of handling the SNMP. But where we've moved towards, and I touched on GNMI. GNMI stands for gRPC Network Management Interface, right? And with GNMI, if you just look at GNMI, there's a you can subscribe to a telemetry stream. And I could have demoed that to you guys, but in the interest of time, I can't do that. But with GNMI, you pretty much create. If you look on your network, for instance, if you remember how to create an API on your network, there's a command. I think it's called management HTTP or management API GNMI. You can actually, Cisco has it, Arista has it, all the major vendors have it. You can enable the API, point it to a specific port, and then you can use your router's username and password. You can have a client that uses that username and password, subscribes to that port, and catches all the telemetry. Now you take that telemetry and you can push it to ELK. Elastic Log Stash Kibana is what it's called. So I've done it using Prometheus. I've subscribed to my interfaces, and then using a GNMI client, and then I push that stream to Prometheus, and then on Prometheus I can have a graph of what's happening on that device, and I can subscribe to everything that device exposes through the gRPC gateway and through the Yang model. So yes, just Google GNMI. It's an interesting project and it's very easy to use. I'll actually publish on my GitLab, I'll publish the GNMI project, and you're welcome to experiment with it and email me, ask me questions if you want.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe as we're closing, you can share that link on the comment section. There's a link that you had said people can go and check.
Yes.
You can just share it in the comment section so that those who are interested can check it out.
Good. What I'll do is I'll just share my GitLab repo for what I've presented now, and then I'll add a footnote in the README file about other projects and links to those projects.
All right. So thank you very much, everyone. It was a very good presentation. I think we need to invite you again, Toni. I can tell there's a lot more that you can share with us. So,
I'm very happy to share it with you, yes.
Yes, thank you very much. To those interested in sharing something, you can check the links that I put on the comment section there. You just fill in the form, we'll contact you, and then we can have a session with you. I can tell most people have got interesting stuff to share here, so please feel free to reach out. Also, as Engineer Cuthbert mentioned, those with blog posts, you can share with us as well. We can put them out on our website. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Please keep on checking our meetup page as well and our website for future events. We'll be putting them there. We're expecting to have another one sometime in April. It's yet to be confirmed.